Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, welcome if you're new here, and welcome to Ramblin Man, the segment where I take all the things I scream into the mirror and I give them to you. You're welcome. Today I want to speak on the subject of anger. The good, the bad, and the ugly. First, I want to preface by saying that anger is not, in and of itself, a bad thing. I think that in today's world, we are fed this narrative through media and the internet that if you aren't happy all the time, if you aren't living in this state of collapsia, then there's something wrong with you. But anger should not and really cannot be repressed or denied because it's a part of you. It's human. Even as an artist, I find it quite limiting to deny the full range of human emotion and experience. Believing you should be happy is just as toxic and exhausting as being constantly angry, because it's not human. I've been on the receiving end of both, and neither one is fun to be around. They both become exhausting in their own ways over time. It's better to accept that you can be angry than to delude yourself into thinking that you can't be angry or shouldn't be angry. Otherwise, it boils over and you explode. People think you're melting down over your overcooked spaghetti when in reality, it's because that hot Brazilian chick with the ass tattoos left you on red 3 weeks ago, and this is just the final nail in the coffin. I know that many people think that anger can't be a positive thing no matter what, but I want you to consider an individual who is incapable of expressing anger, even when it might be reasonable, when they know they've been wronged. If they're treated like a doormat, constantly ridiculed or treated unfairly, and you can't express that frustration, that anger. One, it's going to manifest in other ways that may even be uglier than if you just simply expressed it. And two, it corrodes your insides just physically and mentally. It leads to high blood pressure, early death. It ruins relationships. It's just not a good look. But anger can actually spark you to take action. Recently, I felt a lot of frustration about myself, and rather than stewing in it, which is a terrible idea, I used it as fuel. I took myself to the gym, ripped an intense workout, and then I felt great afterwards because I used it to push myself. And I've done the same thing in my work, in my artistic pursuits, and that's been positive. So in terms of turning anger into inspiration, anger can be incredibly positive in this alchemical way if you know how to use it correctly. Now, as for the bad, I have a metaphor for anger. It's top shelf booze that people treat like Bud Light. And what I mean by that is there is a time and place when anger is appropriate. Unfortunately, like top shelf alcohol, it can be addictive, and I've been guilty of this myself. There's so many people who reach for anger as a substitute for other emotions, say like sadness or humiliation. And anger is an emotion. An emotion is a chemical in the brain, which essentially makes it a drug. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that anger is an addictive drug. People might say, oh, well, that's not true. But think about it. Look at the social media landscape today. What has been statistically proven to drive the most web traffic? Passionate emotion. Anger. It's a trend in our culture to seek out things that either display passionate emotion or trigger it within us, and they usually go hand in hand. I also want to be clear that this isn't like one side of any argument or one group. It's really all-encompassing because, it's just a human thing. And you're going to have these types of people in all walks of life from all different belief systems and tribes and groups and leanings and creeds and all kinds of things. It's human to be that way. It's nobody's fault, really. From the crazed yammerings you see on libs of TikTok to the confrontational and argumentative models of Red Pill podcasts and everywhere in between, we seem to have just leaned into this reality that anger attracts more web traffic. Because anger is a drug, and people want to get their fix. And it's sad. It doesn't surprise me. I don't think there's really anything we can do about it. There's a stereotype associated with anger and men primarily the physical kind of aggression. The reason for that is I think, because we've just been conditioned to not really express feelings in much of any other way. You know, we feel like pussies when we cry, so a lot of men opt for rage. And I think that men, young men especially, we've acknowledged that that's an outdated, old school, toxic way to go about expressing your negative emotions. And I believe that is why the pursuit of emotional intelligence, or even practices like stoicism, have become so popular, is because we acknowledge how bad that is for, never mind everybody else but around us, but just us as individuals. Like, it's bad for yourself to be that way. Using anger as a smokescreen or a defense mechanism is not exclusive to men. I just think that temperamentally and culturally, we tend to use it a lot more. Now, the ugly. Justified anger or indignation. Unless you live under a rock, you've certainly noticed a myriad of examples of this kind of anger. It's the fuel that drives modern cancel culture. And this type of anger is tricky because, it's rather easy to justify anger and explain it intelligently. But it's a very dangerous form of anger because of anger's addictive qualities. If you're addicted to anger, you will seek out reasons to be angry. And once that reason is no longer viable, you'll just move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And you'll just keep doing that because you can't be angry about nothing. That doesn't garner sympathy, and it doesn't attract yes men who kiss your ass and tell you you're right. And that's a big part of it. Jim Norton, the comedian Jim Norton, he made a great point once on the Opie and Anthony radio show where he said, essentially, anger addiction is like, a big part of it is this dragon you chase of wanting everybody to admit that you're right. It's this thing where you want everybody to tell you that you're right, and meanwhile, it never happens. That moment never arrives. So the anger is just all consuming because you're waiting on this thing that will never come. This moment that will never happen. And you can see this in the way the modern left goes after people in terms of justified anger. You look at that whole debacle that happened a couple years ago with Kevin Hart hosting the Oscars. Somebody dug up a tweet of his from like 10 years ago. And all of a sudden, he gets shit canned from hosting the Oscars because somebody needed their fix that day. And everybody else saw that as a viable fix. That's what I saw anyway. Regardless of where you stand on what the tweet actually said, it's a clear example of anger addicts drudging something up out of nowhere to be angry about. And this is essentially the root cause of haters. Rather than being inspired to better themselves by these people that they look at, they use their existence, the very existence of this person, as justification to be angry, to feed into their own bad habit. Anyone who's got anything going on doesn't have the time to be a hater. They don't have the energy, and quite honestly, they don't have the focus or care to be chronically angry at what other people are doing. The best angle you can view this at is when you observe just how fast cancel culture moves. It's so fast. It's like day to day. It's one fix after the other. 1 minute the mob is frothing at the mouth about one thing, and then a fucking set of keys jingles and it's and then another one goes over here, another shiny object catches their eye, and it's and they just keep doing that over and over and over again. And so they exist jumping from one fix to another, and that's their life because they have nothing else going on. And I know I just used an example of the far left, but again, it's not just one side. I live in Florida, right? And I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with right-wing people who just incessantly piss and moan and bitch and complain about the current political climate. Like, if you ain't talking politics, they really want nothing to do with you. It's hilarious. And a lot of it comes from these old heads who are retired, and they have nothing else going on. So they just fill their time with being obsessed with social politics. And it's sad. You know, I've been in conversations like this. I've talked to guys like this, and I look over at their wives, and I see them just visibly exhausted about just by the same inane conversation, the same points being made over and over again, coming out of the same fat face that they married. It's funny. It is funny. It's kind of funny. But I feel for them because I'm only 5 minutes into this conversation and I'm already fed up with it. Imagine how long they've had to put up with it because that person has nothing better to do. If I could give one solid piece of advice for people who struggle with anger, I would say to distance yourself from all the things that give you that anger fix. Get it out of your view, get it out of your feed, get it out of your timeline, and give yourself a hard reset on this bullshit. Because that's what it is. It's bullshit. You're getting angry over nothing. You can justify it all you want, but if it's out of your control, like, I don't know shit about what's going on with any of these wars in any of these other countries, because I know if I were to start looking into them, I would start getting angry at it. I would start having, my opinions would form, and I'd just get pissed off, and it'd become a bad habit. So it's like, same thing with that fucking, what it was it, that Rittenhouse situation? I don't know anything about that situation. Good. I don't want to know anything about that situation, because I know it's going to fuck up my mentality with just being chronically angry, just thinking about it like, fuck them, and this and that, and it's just pointless. It's pointless. It's bad for you. It's like smoking fucking cigarettes. It's like chain smoking. You wouldn't do that, would you? There are some people who, they don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't do drugs, they don't do anything, but the one thing they have is they are chronically pissed off. And so the only way to really solve it is just with any other addiction. You have to get it away from you. You have to, you know, like, if you have a problem with smoking weed, well, there's no weed in the house. Okay, what am I going to do? What am I supposed to feel? What you'll find is that this state of anger that you constantly find yourself in is not your homeostasis. It's this strange high that you get from anger, and you keep chasing it for whatever reason. And that's another thing I'd suggest. Why are you chronically angry? Is this something to do with yourself? Is it something to do with someone in your life or your situation? If so, that's kind of good, because it means you can do something about it. You can take action, or at the very least, you can state your case and express your genuine emotions. If it's something out of your control, like a war going on in a country you've never been to, or a law being passed in a state that you don't live in, or whatever, then you just need to get it out of your view, because as time passes, new keys are jingled, and if you aren't around to hear them, they don't trigger you. Simple as that. I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know I'm a little all over the place with this one because it's such a huge topic. I could talk about this for hours. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when I drop a new video. I like these Ramblin Man videos, so I'm going to have more coming on the pipeline, along with some more lighthearted content with my buddies I hope to put out very soon. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.